our camera shifts is a black screen will pop up on your computer. If you just wait, it will shift. That is the camera moving around the room. It's a bit imperfect, but if you just hold tight, that black screen will go away right away as we switch cameras. To start, I'd just like to introduce our panelists who will be giving a presentation this evening. Starting at this end, we have Leslie Anderson, the Director of Planning and Operations with the City of Saskatoon. Beside her is Kim Horning. She's the Executive Director of Housing Infrastructure and Business Information with the Ministry of Social Services. Next to her is Krista Dawn Kimsey. She's the Community Engagement Specialist with the Mustard Seed. Staff Sergeant Mike Horvath with Saskatoon Police Service, and Deputy Chief Yvonne Raymer with Saskatoon Fire Department. In addition to our panelists, we have a number of support staff here that, as required, we may call upon to give answers to some of the questions here this evening. What I'd like to do is just give you a quick overview. The panelists will share very brief information with you. We ask you to remain seated until they've completed their presentations, at which time we'll shift into question and answer. I will give you direction to line up at the microphone and also some direction if there are any folks with accessibility needs that would like to participate in the questions. We'll tend to that. In addition, we'll have online folks that are here with us tonight that are watching through YouTube. Just to let you know, this meeting will be recorded and there will be a virtual opportunity to ask questions as well, which we'll walk you through when we get to that point in the program. So I'd like to start by asking Leslie Anderson to kick off our formal presentations.
Great, thank you, Penny, for the introductions, and thanks everyone for coming here tonight. And I'd like to thank all the panelists here as well, here to provide you with information and try to answer as many of your questions as we can. So there are multiple agencies involved with shelter spaces, as you can see from the panel today. And we all recognize that there's anxiety and concern around the creation of new shelter spaces. We hope that our session today will cover the information to answer your questions, particularly around how the site will operate and our approach to community safety. So I'm going to tell you tonight quickly here about how the city got involved and the roles of each organization is here tonight, how we arrived at the site location in this area, and what you can expect next from the city. Next slide, please. Providing emergency shelters and related services is the responsibility of the government of Saskatchewan. They'll continue to be responsible for this shelter and all other shelters. As such, the province chooses a service provider to operate their shelters, which in this case is the Mustard Seed. It's been a pleasure working with the Mustard Seed so far, and we're very happy to have them here in our city. In October 2023, the province asked the city to lead the process for site selection for new sites for 60 new emergency shelter spaces in Saskatoon, and the city agreed to do that. And there's many reasons why we agreed to do that. First, we know there's a crisis of homelessness, both with increasing numbers of people who are without homes, as well as the risks that come with our extreme weather and our cold winters. Our 2024 point-in-time homelessness count revealed that Saskatoon is experiencing the highest number of individuals facing homelessness ever recorded. We had almost 1,500 people counted last October, which was nearly triple the number of people in 2022. And so we agreed to work with the province to find new shelter sites because of this increasing number. We also know that we hear from residents through our annual civic services survey that homelessness is the most important issue facing our community. And city administration and members of city council have been advocating to the province for additional shelter spaces to address homelessness in our community for a number of years. I know many members of our community recognize and support the importance of having additional shelter spaces available. Next slide, please. When City Council approved our approach to leading the site selection process, there was a number of criteria established, and you can see them here on the slide. So we were looking for either a site that had an existing building or a vacant site that could meet these criteria. So we needed to find a big enough site that could accommodate room for approximately 30 beds each. We initially started by looking for 2 separate sites that would have 30 beds each. If we were looking at a building, we needed it to meet certain criteria that you can see here on the slide. And then later in 2024, we were also directed to make sure that any site was at least 250 meters away from any elementary school in the public or Catholic system. The other factors that we were going to consider were that there would be internal and external space for gathering on the site to allow people to be outdoors and indoors in a comfortable space. It needed to be nearby to other services in our community that they would need. If possible, we wanted to find a site that was zoned appropriately. And cost was also a factor. So especially as we had to consider a temporary location, cost was an important factor in this. And through subsequent updates, I mentioned that we initially started looking for 2 30-bed sites, but based on discussions with our partners, we advised council that a larger shelter up to 60 beds would be considered if a viable site could be found. So next slide, please. So we've considered probably over 100 sites in the past 2 years and have settled on the site here at 170 31st Street East. It was an extensive site search, but we ended up with this site because it meets most of our criteria. It doesn't have a building on it right now, but it is zoned appropriately for this. It was also beneficial that it was owned by the province already, and that currently it's in use for parking, but it's a permitted use. It's fully zoned. It's fully serviced to allow for this development to proceed. Next slide, please. The lot, you can see here, the yellow block, is located within what we call the central industrial area. It's on a site, as I mentioned, owned by the government of Saskatchewan, and they will be developing a suitable shelter building designed to meet all the criteria that City Council endorsed. The site is currently in use by Saskatchewan Polytechnic for parking, but it's zoned M3, which is our general institutional service district, and a special care home, which is what we consider a shelter to be, is a permitted use in that district. The site is fully serviced, as I mentioned, and zoned for this development, so rezoning or further approval by City Council is not required. The final decision for this site, after we have recommended it to the province, they've confirmed that it works for them, but the ultimate decision rests with the province. It's important to reiterate that this is a location for 60 beds. That is one of our smaller emergency shelters here in Saskatoon. So many of you probably know the Salvation Army shelter on Avenue C. That is up to 75 beds right now, and that has been in our community for decades and operated successfully. It's nearby to residential properties, restaurants, a playground, a park, and Market Square. So these facilities we know are absolutely critical in our community for those who are accessing them, and they've played a tremendous role in making sure that people can receive shelter and get out of our cold winters. Next slide, please. So what you can expect is that we're at the process now where the administration, the civic administration, has recommended this site to the province. They've confirmed that the site is suitable. So today we're here to provide you with information and to listen to you. We want to make sure that we'll strive to answer your questions as much as possible tonight and listen carefully to what you're telling us to understand ways that we can best integrate this shelter into the area. This is a very similar approach that we took to the temporary shelter that's been in operation on Pacific Avenue downtown since April of this year. We've worked with the community in that location to address their concerns and successfully integrate the shelter on that site. So community safety is something that we're considering throughout this entire process, including the design and the construction of the shelter. I will note that there is one remaining area that City Council will have to consider, and that is some infrastructure upgrades required for this site, which includes sidewalk construction along 31st Street and fencing near the rail line. So they will have that brought to them later this year. After all of the panel speakers here have provided their introductory remarks, we'll then turn it over to you and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions, and we'll try to answer as many as we can tonight. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kim with the Government of Saskatchewan.
Thanks, Leslie. Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us today to learn more about the emergency shelter operated by the Mustard Seed. My name is Kim Hornung, and I'm the Executive Director of Housing Infrastructure Business Information with the Government of Saskatchewan. Addressing homelessness is a priority for the Government of Saskatchewan. We focus on building partnerships and working together with Indigenous and community partners to connect individuals with services, offer necessary emergency supports, and help people find the right housing to meet their needs. Next slide, please. Through the provincial approach to homelessness announced in October 2023, we invested $40.2 million to create 155 new supportive housing spaces, 141 new enhanced emergency shelter spaces, 30 new complex needs emergency shelter spaces, with 15 of those spaces at the complex needs emergency shelter that opened in August 2024 on Idlewild Drive. We've also developed new street outreach and community safety responses that further improve safety around emergency shelters and other areas impacted by homelessness and mental health and addiction issues. Next slide. Beyond the initial investment, the provincial approach to homelessness has provided a foundation for collaboration and flexibility to respond to arising needs. In Saskatoon, government has made additional investments in homelessness services in 2025-2026 to support drop-in centers and seasonal washroom and shower services. Over the past winter and spring, we responded to extreme weather by providing $300,000 to the City of Saskatoon to support its cold weather strategy. This included overnight warming operations at the Saskatoon Indian and Métis Friendship Center and Salvation Army. It included additional outreach workers through Saskatoon Tribal Council, and $178,000 to the Salvation Army Crossroads to increase emergency shelter capacity during the cold weather months. We provided a one-time $10,000 grant to Comfy to provide hygiene products and other supplies for its seasonal shower services. We also supported other emerging needs for outreach and homelessness services. In 2025-2026, we're providing $780,500 to Saskatoon Tribal Council to continue Sewayatoden outreach services. This includes an increase of $120,000 to support staffing of peacekeeping services at the City of Saskatoon's Outdoor Navigation Hub. 2 new partnerships are providing seasonal drop-in services, a new daytime drop-in center at Station 20 West, co-funded by the Government of Saskatchewan and the City of Saskatoon and operated by STC, and a new overnight drop-in center at White Buffalo Lodge for youth aged 16 and older in partnership with STC. We continue to work with the city and our community partners to ensure shelter spaces are available and individuals accessing those shelters receive the needed services. Next slide, please. Emergency shelter spaces are just one part of the continuum of services that assist individuals experiencing homelessness to find stability and long-term housing. Enhanced emergency shelters like this one operate 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, providing clients with full access to shelter, meals, case planning, and wraparound supports to address wellness and cultural needs. Through case planning and supports, individuals are connected to services that aid in transitioning them to appropriate housing. As well, through the Income Assistance Mobile Outreach Initiative, Ministry of Social Services income assistance workers will be available on site at the Mustard Seed Shelter to better support citizens with financial needs and finding secure, stable housing. This initiative, available at over 40 community-based organization locations across the province, reduces service gaps and barriers for clients, improves engagement with partner organizations in joint case planning, and helps to accelerate the path to stability for clients with high needs. Next slide. The Government of Saskatchewan will lead the design and construction for the new shelter. We'll also provide the ongoing operation or funding for its operation. We'll begin the procurement process following the neighborhood information sessions, and a request for proposals is expected to be issued this fall. The design will meet the requirements for shelter operations, which includes space for 60 beds, flexible program and service space, office space for site staff, along with kitchen, shower, and washroom facilities. Community safety will also be considered in all aspects of the shelter design. We know homelessness is a complex issue, and addressing it requires a collaborative and flexible approach. Working together with the City of Saskatoon, the Mustard Seed, and other community-based organizations, we continue to connect individuals experiencing homelessness with services to help them find stability and the right housing option to meet their individual needs. With that, I'll hand it off to Krista Dawn.
Thank you, Kim. I think we just need to advance the slides, but they might be giving us just a slight bit of grief. What I'm going to suggest, because we do want to get as many questions in as we can, that we're going to proceed with Krista Dawn's presentation while they get the slides up and running, if that's okay with you, Krista Dawn.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
All right, good evening. My name is Krista Dawn Kimsey, and I'm very pleased to be here with our CEO, James, and our shelter manager, Levi. And I'm very happy to share with you about the Mustard Seed today. The Mustard Seed has been serving communities across Western Canada for over 40 years. We currently operate in 7 cities and came to Saskatoon on December 1. Our mission is simple but urgent: to eliminate homelessness and reduce poverty in the cities we serve. We have a housing-focused model, which means we meet the immediate needs like meals, shelter, and hygiene, while helping people take steps towards permanent housing and long-term stability. We believe everyone deserves dignity, safety, and a pathway towards greater stability and hope. We bring extensive experience in operating shelters of many different types, from very large facilities like our Foothill shelter in Calgary, which serves 370 people, and then smaller shelters like Strathcona in Edmonton that has 45 beds. We have specialized women's only shelters. We've adapted to community needs with temporary pop-up shelters during COVID and seasonal winter emergency shelters. Throughout all of this, our experience has taught us how to operate effectively in many different contexts while prioritizing safety and dignity for all. So when the slides come, we have a few pictures of our shelters. One that we'd love to show you is our largest operation with 370 beds. At the Mustard Seed, we believe that stability starts with meals and rest and safety. The point in time count last year let us know that 67% of people who were experiencing homelessness were impacted by violence during that time. Once people are inside at the shelter and stabilized, then we can walk alongside them to secure housing. That support might look like ID replacement, or accessing income assistance, or connecting with health or cultural or wellness services. We also have an example to show you of our central shelter in Edmonton. This is a shelter that has 124 beds. Our holistic approach addresses physical, mental, and spiritual needs. Housing-focused shelters aren't just about emergency care. They're about moving vulnerable people from crisis towards lasting stability. In response to the point in time count that you already heard, last year of 1,500, we opened a temporary 40-bed shelter at 210 Pacific Avenue in April 1. And since opening, we've seen a real impact. 26 individuals have already moved along the housing continuum towards stable housing. More than 14,000 meals have been served, and hundreds of community members have supported us through food donations. We are committed to culturally safe programming, including Indigenous-led supports that honor traditional practices. We're honored to have been selected by the province to operate the new enhanced emergency shelter at 170 31st Street. This is going to be a 60-bed facility. It'll be open 24/7 with appropriate staffing and security measures to ensure a safe environment for everyone. We'll provide 3 meals a day, showers, housing navigation, case management that guides people through their individual needs along the housing continuum, and wellness and cultural supports. It's designed to serve mid-acuity guests, so those people who are able to manage their daily living independently, but who need stability and support to move forward. We'll have security cameras inside and outside of the building, and continue our practice of having 3 safety assessments for individuals coming into the shelter. Providing safety is a top priority for our guests, our staff, our volunteers, and the surrounding community. Next slide, please. The Pacific Avenue shelter will remain open until the new shelter is built in 2026, allowing for a continuity of service. The province will lead the development and construction, and the Mustard Seed will focus on the operations, programs, and community care. We look forward to building relationships with community members as the shelter is built and when we become closer neighbors. Thank you. I'll pass it on.
Krista, John, did you want to show those photos? If we could just go
Sure,
back 3
just
slides,
go
that would be
back.
great. Thanks for that suggestion, Staff Sergeant.
Yep. Okay, great. This is the Foothill Shelter. This is a shelter that serves 370 people. And it provides wraparound services. And the next slide after that one is our central shelter. This shelter has 124 beds. And this is an example of our meal hall here, so that you can see our holistic approach. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Krista Dawn. We'll pass it over to Staff Sergeant Mike Horvath with the Saskatoon Police Service.
Hello, folks. Thanks for coming out this evening for our evening session with respect to the incoming shelter for the fall of 2026. Are my slides working?
I believe the slides are just glitching, and that's probably going to follow us as we go here.
Technology.
This will force us to communicate better without pictures.
Perfect. I'm going to be speaking to you folks about the work that we do with respect to our working coordinated team between the City of Saskatoon, Saskatoon Police Service, and the Saskatoon Fire Department. So as we get rolling through, what I'll do is I'll give you an overview in terms of how this relationship came about. So myself has been part of this working group since 2021, along with Deputy Chief Raymer. And I'd like to acknowledge my colleague in the room there, Michelle Beveridge, in the back, if you can maybe wave your hand there. She's been working with us these last number of years. So just to give you an overview with respect to how this situation or this working coordinated group came about, it started in the winter season of 21-22. As we seen Saskatoon experience its first emergency wellness center being opened in downtown by the Saskatoon Tribal Council. And what we learned from that opening is we really had to start working together as a community in terms of the three organizations. This working group was initiated by the, at the time, the chiefs of police and the chief of the Saskatoon Fire Department, along with the City of Saskatoon. I'd like to impress upon the people here in this room is that working group back then is still working today with the three of us. This is our role in our jobs with respect to supporting Saskatoon's homelessness issue as well as shelter strategies. This relationship that we learned very early on, because typically that's not something you would see historically, and I've been doing this job for almost 30 years. You can tend to get siloed, but we learned very early on about having to collaborate and work together as a result of that. So these allowed for relationships to develop these consistent communication pathways, which then allowed us to develop what we call integrated operating plans, which support the community along with our continued work with the various stakeholders in the province. So as Kim had mentioned in her slides, in October of 23, the province announced their path, which created all of these new beds within the province. I guess the next slide, if that'll work. So the working coordinated group between the city, police, and fire developed an integrated operating plan in April of 2025 for the opening of the temporary shelter on Pacific Avenue. And this was really important because as we were coming out of the winter of 24-25 winter season, Saskatoon had 2 winter warming facilities operating that were seeing quite a few people in the community. So for example, I believe we were upwards in both areas in and around 150 persons between both facilities, right, and stuff. So the opening of the shelter on April the 1st added 40 beds on Pacific Avenue. So you can see there was a significant gap in terms of resources for our marginalized, vulnerable population in the community. So in order to support the opening of the temporary shelter site on Pacific Avenue, we took the approach of a tiered response with respect to the police, the fire department, and the city of Saskatoon, working with the commissionaires to offer another support service so that we could provide as much security coverage as possible to that specific area 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. And as I had mentioned, with respect to that tiered model, it's myself, Deputy Chief Raymer, and Michelle Beveridge. We met with the province, Mustard Seed, and the commissionaires as we built this integrated operating plan to understand each of the partners' expectations and responsibilities inside and outside of the shelter. My colleague Michelle was the point person for our group, and she organized meetings with the immediate neighbors of the shelter and their partners. And the purpose of this was to present an overview of our integrated operating draft and to as well listen to our partners and listen to the residents in the area to develop next steps as we move forward. So what comes out of that is a revised integrated operational plan, which was sent to our neighbors to let them know how their concerns had been incorporated, along with a who to call guide. And you'll see that in a few slides down the road on an infographic. Communication and updates continue regularly among our partners and as needed for the neighbors. One of the things that we really realized, because this is new, and I guess what I'd like to say is everything has changed post-COVID, right? So we know in the last 5 years, everything has changed in our community. And it's not, what Saskatoon is dealing with is not specific to Saskatoon. It's right across our country. We're in a housing crunch. We have people dealing with addiction. So we as we work together with our partners, we had to develop a good communication pathway tool in order to keep our residents and folks aware. And that's one of the things that Michelle is very, very good at in terms of developing this this communication pathway tool. And the other thing is when we work together as a integrated operating group, the collaborative work that we do, we can see the results of it, and it allows for us to sit down, like we front load right at the opening, and we're meeting every week and we're going over all of the information that we can in order to understand, how are things going. So as we move into, we're just starting Q4 here shortly of 2025. We'll be moving into 2026. So as we start to think about the permanent shelter that'll be opening up, I believe in the fall of 26, we will continue this work. The city will be collaborating. We'll be working as our working coordinated group between the city, police, and fire, as well as our partners here with the Mustard Seed and the province, as well as any other supports that we can in order to build a support the best that we can with the resources that we have for the shelter space and the residents and businesses in and around that area. I'll just give you an example in the next couple of slides. Is kind of like data collection in terms of like how we will track our data with respect to social disorder calls, because that's the type of calls that we tend to see in and around areas of shelter spaces, drunkenness, suspicious people, need ambulance calls, etc. And the importance of data gathering is such that it allows us to get a story of what's happening in a community so that we can try to allocate resources the best that we can. I'll go to the next slide, please. So this is the type of information that we utilize. I have access to an analyst. We look at that information, and then that information is shared between our partners so that we can recognize the hotspots and pressure points in our community. And then on this slide here, next slide. This is the infographic I was talking about, which was developed for the opening of the temporary site on Pacific Avenue, which we had, that's posted on the City of Saskatoon's website, but was also available for our residents and businesses in and around the area of that neighborhood. And I think now I'm going to pass it off to my colleague.
I told him to make sure he turned on his mic and I didn't do it. It's like being muted in a meeting. Good evening, everyone. Yvonne Raymer, Deputy Chief. We can go to the next slide, and I want to be conscious of the fact I want to hear your questions. So I'm going to kind of go through this. Some of the takeaways that we have from our information sessions is that we do listen to some of the concerns. And one of the things with the development of our integrated operational plan, was looking at things. When we talk about the temporary shelter, there was a dance studio, there's a daycare, there was, I'll call them like dental services, psychologists. So what were their peak times? What time do we need a heavy presence? And it was actually very regimented and it was scheduled. So we actually did, when Staff Sergeant Horvath says we front loaded it, we made sure that we had a very heavy presence from the onset so that we could be scalable, that we could pivot if we needed to, but that we were there to provide the types of services that were required, not only to support the unhoused, but to support the businesses, the residents, and anybody that was accessing the downtown. We serve everybody equally. This isn't about serving one population more than another. It's very coordinated. We communicate daily. We just had a huge meeting this morning just to walk through anything that we need to solution. And it wasn't around the temporary shelter, it was actually about a different situation. So that's just how committed that fire, police in the city are into being coordinated and being collaborative. So next slide, please. I'm not going to bore everybody with data, but I do watch the data quite a bit daily, frankly. So some of the interactions here you'll see is I just highlighted some of the encampments in the city, and you can see that in 2024 we had 1,255 for the year, and already as of August 1st we were at 1,020. I can tell you right now, when I looked at the data this morning, we've actually surpassed last year's numbers. So the number of unhoused individuals in our community is rising, and we actually have had all 70 neighborhoods have had unhoused individuals. So it's not in 4 or 5 neighborhoods, it's in every neighborhood across our city. It's just more heavily concentrated in some, which will take us to the next slide. So we heat map everything as well. So this is the encampments. We actually look at our sharps or overdoses, graffiti, and then we allocate our resources based on the data that we see. But part of the information sharing and the collaboration that we do with police is we look at the hotspots. So when you see sort of, I call it the ghosting, that's the neighborhoods that have unhoused individuals. But as you get into a brighter green, you're looking at more concentrated areas. When you get into yellow, we're getting pretty warm. And when you look at the red, that's our hotspot. And so when we actually share our data and overset it with police, we have common hotspots. We're dealing with the same individuals, just for different reasons. So that's how we started to come together to realize we can be coordinated, we can collaborate, and we need to work together to serve the community in a way that's effective, and we're not creating overlaps and we're not creating redundancies. So, and this is, next slide. This is 2025. We have a few more hotspots from 2024, similar, we call it the corridor, where you see that yellow to red. Similar, but we do have some concerns. One is actually just a very complex individual that we're actually dealing with. Just to the west has become a hotspot on their own, and we've tried to work through with other organizations of how we can offer supports to assist that individual. But in the north end, within the last 4 weeks, the inspectors have identified that hotspot is because of panhandling, and panhandling does pay off. So I'll encourage this group, if you want to support people, giving them money out your window is not the way to do it, because you create a hotspot, and those individuals were actually in a very unsafe location. I don't know if anybody shops at Costco or is out in the north end, but that is the top of the overpass at Circle and Idlewild. So it's become a hotspot itself. So this is the type of information that we collect. How do we allocate our resource? So when we look at what we've done with the temporary shelter, and how coordinated we are right now for the mustard seed, our plan is to actually take that model and shift it over to the new location in order to be fluid and flexible and to do what works, but also engage with community stakeholders along the way prior to the opening, so that we can try to work with you with what does our presence look like, what does the community need to be supported. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you to the panelists. And thank you for being patient with our technology for those folks online. What we'll do is we'll shift into the question and answer. The goal of this portion of the session is to create a safe space, and the panelists and their support staff would like to answer as many questions as they can this evening. So we'll go until 8:20. I'll just give you some direction on how we're going to facilitate this. So for those of you in the room that would like to ask questions, you are free to begin lining up at the microphone where Karen is right there. If there is anyone here in the room that has accessibility requirements or requires assistance otherwise to ask a question, please just raise your hand now or at any point. Thank you. I see a hand up. And so we'll bring a mic to you. So I'll just give some specific instruction and they'll let you know when to go over there, Karen. Yeah. Yeah. So what we'll do is we will have also the Pigeonhole question app, and you can see this up on the screen here. You can either scan the QR code here in the room that's at the back near Karen on the wall, or you can go to pigeonhole.at. You're going to enter the passcode in all caps shelter. What this will do is it will load all questions into the app. For those of you in the room, you may want to also go into the app because you can vote up questions that are of most interest to you. So any questions that are listed in there, you're able to go and just mark them up so that we focus on those questions that have the most interest. What we'll do is we will go between questions here in the room and questions online just to create some equity here for folks that have joined us via YouTube. And what we'll do is we're going to allow 3 minutes. I'm going to keep a timer for the questions. So you'll have 3 minutes to ask your questions. We do ask that you focus it on questions. If there are comments regarding the shelter, we have somewhere where you can submit those afterwards. But we want to make the best use of our panelists and our partners here today to answer questions for you folks. At 2.5 minutes, I will let you know that there's 30 seconds left. We ask that you just ask one question or 3 minutes. So I'll help you navigate that. We request that you enter your first name online when asking the questions, or just let us know what your first name is here in the room so we can address you. And in terms of remaining respectful, our panelists are committed to having a respectful conversation with you. We ask for the same respect in the room. If there's any questions that do become difficult or not respectful, I will just interrupt and ask you to restate your question. If it continues, I will ask you to just step away and we'll go to another question. I don't expect that we'll have that situation, but just to set out that expectation ahead of time. If you would like to ask additional questions here in the room, and we have a lineup, so you'll have 3 minutes or one question, I'll just ask you to go to the back of the line so we can make room for most people to ask questions here this evening. So with those guidelines in place, I think we'll get started. So Karen, I'm going to start here in the room. Yeah, this person here had their hand up. So if they would like to go first, that would be great. Thank you. And if you could just state your name and then ask your question. Thank you.
David Finde, Sweetgrass First Nations, Treaty 6 Territory, Turtle Island. I wasn't told about this meeting. I just heard it on the news. But you can add up how many people that you're going to house, right? Add them up how many? 900? 800? How many can you house right now before the snow falls? What's going to happen? How come these churches aren't opening up? All these big halls. Maybe you should look towards them to help out our people. I thank you for recognizing Treaty 6 territory, but we're all treaty here. We all have to help each other. I like your speeches are all written on paper. You have all your pictures or whatever. I can't see on none of that. I don't write a speech. I just have to come and say it from my heart. There's 3,000 homeless people out there. Never mind the pit count. 60 days, not even. There's going to be snow on the ground. And you have room for how many people? What about the rest of them? How many are going to freeze, going to OD, are going to lose limbs, get chronic illnesses? Where do they go? You just leave them out on the street? You can't open up any of these big churches, these big halls. I went to the east side and I talked to them. They have really nice churches over there, but will they open them up to anybody? They'd rather have a person freeze on their church steps. And what is that? Who's a sinner if you can let somebody freeze on your church steps? things have to be opened up, not only 600 or 500 or how many you have there. You have to get doors open for everybody. And there's lots of addiction problems, mental health problems. I don't think it takes psychiatrists to deal with them. I've been to meetings when there's been psychiatrists all along the wall. How come there weren't elders there? They get paid 500, 600 bucks an hour. And an elder just goes and sits there. Something has to change really fast. Like tomorrow, not next week or in the springtime when mustard seed is finally done that. How many people are we going to have body bags for? That's the truth out on the street. How many are we going to lose tomorrow? Am I going to lose my friend today, tomorrow, the next day? Right now, I'm homeless, and I'm scared shitless, man. What am I going to do? Can I go to mustard seed? Is there going to be enough room for me there? Am I going to like their services, what they provide for me? I don't know.
Is it David? Did I get your name correct?
David Finday.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. I did hear some questions in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it off to Levi, who's the operations manager at the Mustard Seed. And after that, I think we'll move over to Kim to just have a discussion about high-level strategy.
One more thing.
Yeah.
When Mustard Seed came into the city, I was there for their meeting. There was a whole bunch of them, a $60 plate. It was a really good meeting, but all the stuff that they're providing is already in the city. Why do we have to get somebody else from out of the province to do that? Why can't we fund these programs in the city, enhance them? Colonialism, it's still there. Why are you trying to run us? Thank you.
Thank you, David. I think, so there's a couple of questions there. The out of province comment and why Mustard Seed was chosen as a provider will go to Kim, but just to start, Levi, if you want to talk about the immediate services that are available.
Yeah, we offer an enhanced shelter. So that is focused on case planning and moving people forward in the housing continuum. So we start off with case planning, looking at building up their ability to find housing. So we're looking at getting IDs, income and service comes in twice a week. We run addictions programs in the building. We've partnered with New Pathways to run cultural. They also provide a clinical service as well for counseling, and they come in once a week. And yeah, I think that's what we have there.
Excellent. Thank you, Levi. And I'm going to pass it off to Kim. Just a quick reminder, Kim, in terms of how the Mustard Seed was selected, particularly that they're out of province.
Thanks, Penny. And thanks, David, for the question. So homelessness is a really complex issue that is not unique to Saskatchewan or Saskatoon. The service provider was selected through an RFP process in late 2023 and was awarded to Mustard Seed in 2024.
Thank you, Kim. I'm going to go online now to the questions that have the most votes. Jay Peters has asked, my question is the placement does not meet the requirements of being too close to elementary school. And I'll pass it over to Leslie to respond to the proximity to the elementary school.
Great, thank you, Penny, and thank you, Jay, for the question. So this site is placed in between two different elementary schools. Our requirement is to be 250 meters or more from an elementary school. So it's 295 meters from the Caswell School and 355 meters from St. Michael's. And that's as the crow flies. So we realize that it will always be too close for many people to a school, but working in a city, in an urban environment, we have a lot of schools throughout the entire community. So this site actually meets our criteria, and it's part of why it was selected. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to go to the podium here in the room now. If you tell us, share your first name with us, and then one question. Thank you.
Yes, and I have three questions, and I can set them in the less than 3 minutes. And my first question is, what is the spirit, the objective on the 250 meters to the school? What are we trying to accomplish with those 250 meters? And then we should ask ourselves if we're accomplishing that. And my second question is about
Oh, I'm just going to jump in if I may. I missed your name. I'm sorry.
Paula Gioino.
Okay, we'll just do one question because we have a lineup, and then I'm going to ask you to go to the back of the line. So we'll respond to that question, and then we'll give others a chance to ask, if I may. So I'm going to go back to Leslie too. The question was, what was the objective of the 250-meter buffer?
So the intent we're putting that in was to ensure as much as possible that students could access the schools without being nearby to a shelter. As I said, in an urban environment, this is incredibly difficult, but it was an intent to create a buffer space around around the schools as much as we could, specifically to the Catholic and public elementary schools.
I'm sorry, I don't think you're answering because my question specifically says, like, what is a buffer? How does it work? What is the methodology? Why distance work?
So I'll try to explain as much as I can, but a buffer is basically just a set area around a site where we would say it couldn't go. And so in this case, we are outside that buffer area. As I mentioned, the intention was to try to ensure that students wouldn't have to pass by a shelter near to their schools. But as I said, in the city, we have a lot of schools in our neighborhoods. And so trying to find a location that doesn't have any impact ever close by to a school is incredibly difficult. But maintaining a buffer, a set area of 250 meters was the requirement. And that is what we've achieved with this site.
Okay, like as for me, the way I see it, and I have other questions that I was actually more interested in doing, but I only
I'm just going to ask you to go to the back of the line, and then we'll give others a chance, but we would love to hear your questions for sure.
No, this is related to the same question.
Okay.
And what I'm trying to say is, like 250 meters, the way that I try to see distance is to create dispersion, right? So people walk in different directions, and then you are less likely to have a high foot traffic across a school. But for that, you need paths or corners. And this is a funnel right into the front of one school. And then you hit one corner, and then there's a back alley into the backyard of the other school. So if dispersion is what is important in this buffer area, I don't think it's actually meeting criteria. Like, we always need to think about the spirit of the law. What are we trying to accomplish here? Because if you're basing your location on a technicality, you're not really respecting the spirit of the law.
Thank you for that. I'm going to go online now. The next one online is from Andrew, and the question is, what will be done to minimize public drug use like we see around other shelters at this new location? How I'm going to direct this question is we'll think about it on the site. So I'll ask Mustard Seed, probably Levi, to answer first, and then we'll move over to Staff Sergeant Mike Horvath to talk about just off of the site. Thanks, Levi.
So we do allow intoxicated individuals into the shelter, but we do not permit any drug use on site, and we do confiscate any drugs that we find. So we do a safety check on them to see whether or not they meet the criteria of whether they're safe. And if they do not meet that criteria, we would usually call the police force and ask them to take them to the complex needs shelter, because that is generally kind of our line of where we won't let them in the building. And that's our response. And that's always been a very quick response. Any use on the site will result in a loss of service. We won't give them any service for a certain period of time because we want to discourage that as much as possible. And so far it's been pretty successful and people respect that fairly well.
Thank you, Levi. We'll go over to Staff Sergeant Mike Horvath.
Yes, hello. That's a good question because this is a difficult conversation piece with respect to the ongoing challenges in our community with the crisis that we're dealing with opioids and fentanyl and things like that. So we have a significant amount of individuals that are dealing with active addiction, which is the purpose of our working coordinated group supporting the area in and around these shelters. And again, what I want to impress upon you folks is the coordination between police, fire, the city of Saskatoon, the commissionaires. The location of this shelter being near Sask Poly campus, we will also be engaging the commissionaires and working with them on site there as part of the support plan in and around the area. And just trying to ensure that, as I mentioned earlier, front loading the support response and then following it through with our weekly meetings and measuring over the course of time in terms of how that support is going. Do we need to accelerate or increase, or are we able to step back a little bit and based on what our observations are and what our information coming into the area? Does that answer?
Thank you. Yes. I'm going to move over to the room. If you can state your name again, and just a reminder, we have 3 minutes maximum and one question. Thank
Okay.
you.
My name is Joanna Latimer. And my question is about, actually the fire, she put up that slide about how
heat map.
the homelessness is all around Saskatoon, like on the east side, on the west side. So my question is, why does the city of Saskatoon treat the homeless population and the homeless issue like a west side issue, not a Saskatoon issue? There's no services on the east side of Saskatoon. Why is that?
And I think what I'll do, I'm going to pass this over to Yvonne just to start to talk about the heat map that you had shared in the areas. And then I think we'll shift it over to Leslie after that to talk about the strategy geographically. Thanks.
Hi, I think it's a great question.
Thank you for your,
I appreciate that you
that
actually looked
proved
at it, Zara.
exactly what I wanted to ask.
So I'll give you a little bit of background of what we have identified with the heat map. We asked the 5 Ws, who, what, when, where, why, how can we support you before the fire inspectors go in and take any remedial action against an encampment? What kind of supports will you take? The individuals that we find in the north end and the east end have different needs than those that are accessing the services currently. And
Can I ask a dumb question for that? Do you feel that the reason that the west side of Saskatoon has more issues is because of the funneling of the services to the west side?
No, that's going to be a tough answer here, because when you talk to some of the individuals on the east, and this is difficult for me because I'm portraying personal relaying of how individuals on the east side feel. They do not want to cross over there because they're not addicted to drugs. A lot of them don't have mental health issues. Some of it is intoxication.
Let's let
They're addicted to alcohol, and their fear is and this is going to make me unpopular in this room. One is that a lot of them are not Indigenous on the east side, and they do not feel welcomed on the west side. The other piece is the access to drugs and the worry about being preyed upon by the gang. You're absolutely right. There are no services on the east side. We advocate for that. I think we need to actually serve the entire population. If you're asking the opinion of me,
I'm just
be
going to step
answering
in
that.
if I may.
Yeah.
I would really appreciate if we could just take turns speaking. So we'll let Yvonne finish. And
Sorry, we didn't have a say in this, so we just.
I would also like to finish speaking.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what I would like to do is Yvonne will finish her question, and then we're going to move on to an online question. Thank you.
Okay, I do appreciate your comments. I hear your concern. I think that we need more shelters within the city. I do believe we need services on the east side, but you can see the hotspot is definitely on the west side, and I don't get to choose the location either, but my job is here to support.
Thank you, Yvonne. Leslie, did you want to talk in general about the strategy? Thank you.
So many of the services, as you say, are located nearby here. There's many services on the west side more than the east side. That has not been dictated by the city. That has been determined by those service providers in terms of where they find a location, where they want to locate. We treat those services as any other business. So if you find a location and you're permitted to operate in that location, that's your choice. So many of the services in our city may have started downtown, for example. You know, we know social services, income assistance, they are located downtown. That's a permitted location for them to operate. Many of the businesses that are along 20th that provide support, that's a permitted location for them to operate. They could operate on 8th Street. They could operate in another retail location. They chose not to. We have not dictated that for any of those services. So it has become an area where we are seeing more concentration of services. And I do know that many service providers are also looking at what else do they need to provide in the community in other locations.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to go online now. Why is the city not making use of churches, gyms, or other publicly owned spaces to provide shelter to treat this like the emergency it is? So specific to those other community spaces, if you want to go ahead, Leslie.
Sure. So this is something where it's kind of an active conversation. There are some churches out there in the community that want to provide some services in their facilities. If they want to do that, they can. If they want to allow people into their space in more hours of the day, they can. But it has not been something that we've seen typically. The city is actively working with other partners to try to find some warming locations for winter, which has been something that's been more active in the last few years. And that is something we will continue to work on, but we don't dictate whether any other publicly accessible halls or gyms or churches can or cannot be used for this.
Thank you, Leslie. We're going to go to the next person in the room. If you would state your name, please, and your question. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Nathan, and I'm just for the record, like I'm in favor of the shelter where it's proposed. I think it's great, and you know, I'm just a couple blocks away or whatever. I think it should be in the community because the unhoused people are part of our community too. What I'm curious about is like the shelter that you had before, or the temporary shelter, right, on Pacific Avenue. We're looking at building a permanent shelter now. We should have a permanent shelter. Why do we need to why can't we have the temporary shelters also remain? I even read in the information service pamphlet that, you know, came out with this, that it was designed to hopefully have an overlap, you know, so that it was a clean and smooth transition from a temporary shelter into a permanent one. And we're only adding 20 beds. Like having 40 there and 60 at a permanent one is still only 100 beds, 100 to 200 people. Why can't we keep everything that we have open and open more instead of looking at like transitioning from a temporary to a permanent? Have both.
Good question. Thank you. I'll pass it off to Leslie or Kim. Who do you think's better suited to answer that? I think Kim. Thank you.
The temporary shelter is temporary because of the zoning requirements. We can only use it as a temporary shelter for 18 months. That's the approval that we have. So it's not creating 100 new spaces. Those 40 will move into the 60 space location. So this site is zoned appropriately already, where the temporary one was not. So that's why it's moving over. You want to add anything?
Thank you, Kim. Leslie, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I'll just clarify because actually the one downtown, it could be a permanent one. It was approved as a temporary. It was funded as a temporary, and I think it wouldn't fit 60. That site wouldn't fit 60, and with the way the service provision was set up, we needed to find a 60 bed location. So the temporary one just wouldn't work for the 60 bed for permanent.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to go to the next question online. Jade R has asked, why has the city decided to put a shelter in the center hub of 3 bars, an off-sale liquor store, and 2 cannabis retailers when homeless people are also struggling with addiction? This shelter will be vulnerable for people trying to recover from addiction because the access is steps away for them. So I'll pass this off to Leslie, and then I'm thinking perhaps we'll go to Levi at the Mustard Seed to make a comment on that as well.
Yeah, and thanks for the observation about what's nearby. Unfortunately, throughout our city, we have many liquor stores, cannabis retailers, bars, restaurants in many areas of our city. So if we are looking to provide this type of facility, we don't have a restriction that prevents these other uses to be there. In many cases, you know, a cannabis retail store can be in many of these locations, a bar can be in many locations, a liquor store can be in many locations. So that was not a restriction that we were considering in order to keep, you know, a segregated area around a new homeless shelter.
Thank you, Leslie. And I'll just have Levi, if you want to offer any comments as well.
Yeah, proximity has never really stopped access to substances that people are addicted to, but we do offer some addictions programming. And like I said before, we do have a partner organization that comes in to provide some clinical services for those who are seeking it. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Levi and Leslie. And I'll go back to the podium, if you will.
Yes. Hi, you know me already. I'm Paula. I want to give an introduction to my question. And I would say Caswell is quite a mixed community. And I've been living there since 2016. I've been myself in affordable housing, social assistance. So I can give faith about that we need proper services around us. Like those are uplifting things that we all need. We need a library where people don't do drugs, where we can go after work, because now the library is closed at 6 in the West. And we also have a low literacy rate. That's why we have the Saskatoon Public Foundations in our schools. We have high obesity rates and low engagement in sports. And I know the YMCA is talkative to the city about operating within the Harry Bailey, and that's a much needed resource for low income communities. So my question is, how is the city of Saskatoon and the government of Saskatchewan willing to do a legally binding contract where if those services decline, we close the shelter? Is that an option? And another question on the same line would be, if given that we already are a community that is struggling and where a broken car can mean someone losing their job because they cannot go to work, and if there could be some sort of monetary compensation, let's say a quarterly report comes that property crime increase, well, then a monetary compensation for the residents of the community where so they can fix their car and go to work. And again, there is a very delicate balance in our community that cannot be broken. So what type of accountability do we have that if this doesn't work, we are not let, in the ditch?
I'll pass that over to Kim to start. So the question was, if the shelter is not successful, what are the remedies then to address that?
So the province is responsible for providing the operating funding for the shelters as well. So we do have a contract that we enter with our service providers where they are required to provide the services as they've outlined in their presentation. If you do have concerns around it, feel free to reach out to, I know the Mustard Seed has an open door policy as well as the province. You're more than welcome to reach out to us if you see something or if you're feeling something is being missed.
Am I here? Fairhaven was given a lot of promises and they have seen a lot of consequences. So my question is, of course, in goals where you put goals and expectations, there is room for troubleshooting and making it work. Right? I'm not wishing to fail. I live there. I want it to thrive, right? But I need the shelter to thrive and I need my community to thrive. Both need to thrive. So my question is, if after troubleshooting, the community is not thriving, is the shelter willing to, is the government willing to close it? Let's say Master Seed fails, you bring another one, it keeps failing. Is the government willing to close it if this is a failure?
I'll pass it over to you, Kim.
We do a lot of work with our partners to ensure they're not failing. So with both the city of Saskatoon and the Mustard Seed and the service providers, there's a lot of work that goes into those planning. Mike touched on it on the community partnership and the work that we do together to make sure that those issues are being addressed. Again, there is a contract that we work with Mustard Seed on, and they do their best. If there are issues, we want to hear about them. That's the one other piece. We can't address issues that we aren't aware of. So I'd invite you and anyone else with issues that come up to reach out to one of those partners to make sure that we can address it as a group.
Yes or no question, right? Is like, if everything fails, is the government willing to close the shelter after troubleshooting?
We're here to, the goal would not to get there, because the goal is to continue to assist people in those shelters as best we can.
Thank you, Kim. I'm going to go to the next question online. This one's from Patricia. With the city planning to redevelop the Harry Bailey Aquatic Center, how do you think this project will impact the new enhanced emergency shelter? And I'll pass this off to Leslie to start.
Thank you. So with Harry Bailey and the project to renovate that, and that will obviously be ongoing. And there will be discussions with the operators about what it means when the Harry Bailey reopens and what it means when the shelter opens. And then also, of course, we will have safety plans for Harry Bailey in terms of how they will respond to any areas of concern that they might see once they're operational. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but there.
I think too, if we could hear from Staff Sergeant Mike Horvath, just regarding safety perhaps with proximity to the Harry Bailey Aquatic Center and the new shelter.
Yep, that's a good question. Again, and you're going to keep hearing me repeat this working coordinated group and our integrated operating plan in terms of how we will support the area in and around, whether that's the shelter, businesses, and the residents. But now we have also Sask Polly's on site, and we have Harry Bailey Aquatic Center that's there. And that's the key part of ensuring that we do not become siloed in the work that I do, that Deputy Chief Raymer does, that the city of Saskatoon does, right? Like we know that our collaborative work is successful. Like is it you know, we understand that if as long as we have coordination and we are ensuring that we have good support in and around the area, we can ensure that those communication pathways are in place so that we can support Harry Bailey, we can support Mustard Seed, and as mentioned, when Harry Bailey does open, and I'm sorry, Leslie, is there a timeline on? We don't have a timeline on that. So let's just early 27, I guess, and for God's sakes, media's here, don't quote me on that. But if we thought early 27, absolutely, we would be back to the table again between the city, police, and fire, thinking about what are the things that we need to consider, working with the commissionaires, whatever support services that are there, to ensure that, you know, that the ingress and egress for patrons that are using that facility, that they feel comfortable to do so.
I'm just going to wait because we do have to follow the guidelines. I thank you for that. We're going to follow the guidelines because if we transgress on one, then I have to let everyone jump in. So I'm just going to interrupt. Thank you, Staff Sergeant.
If you don't get to it, come see me after. Okay.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. And David, this is Penny, the facilitator. I am aware that you have another question and I've held your place in line. So there's approximately 4 or 5 questions and then I'll call on you for them to bring a mic over. So thank you for that. I'm going to go back to the podium here. If you could state your name.
Hi, my name is Hal. I have a question probably towards Leslie, but I'll let the moderator decide. It's been mentioned that you had 100 sites. In the interest of transparency, will you be interested in the additional sites? Second part of that is, what are the credentials for the shelters that have been placed in the city? Along with that, you mentioned the challenges of the urban environment and the challenges with schools and bars, et cetera. Have you considered a peaceful environment near the city on the countryside?
Thank you for that, Hal. So 3 parts to the location there, Leslie, was the criteria, what is the credential for the sites, and have you considered something more remote that's peaceful?
Sure. So I didn't quite catch the part of the first question. Was it, will we share the other sites or are we looking for more?
That's correct. Will you share the 100
Okay.
sites?
Okay. Actually, that we're not going to share that list. We looked at many sites. I would say we're underestimating at 100. And many of those sites were not for sale. So they were privately owned or owned by another organization. And we looked at them to see, you know, would that even be a possible one to consider? And we reviewed it against our criteria and based on what we knew and eliminated a lot of them based on that. So because they were publicly owned, privately owned, that were never up for discussion in a public forum, we will not be sharing that list. We definitely considered throughout the city, including on the edge of the city, in a more peaceful environment perhaps, but still within our jurisdiction. Removed sites because they were not close to services, they were not accessible by public transportation, for example, and we couldn't put people into that sort of situation where they wouldn't have easy access to other locations. And I think I lost your mid question.
Around the urban environment and having a peaceful
Yeah.
setting.
So the list of criteria that I shared earlier, which was around, you know, is it a big enough site to accommodate the building? There were a number of criteria that were specific to a building if we were looking at an existing building. And then we had the specific criteria around distance from schools. We also were looking for a property that would allow a big enough building that could have internal gathering space as well as external gathering space for the people using the shelter so that they would be able to gather on site without impacting other neighborhoods. So I can share again the criteria and they're on our website as well.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to go to an online question. This one is from Dawn. Is it possible for the proposed 60-bed shelter to be reduced to a 30-bed shelter? So I'll direct this to Kim when I've done reading it. Or ideally 10, as was proposed and shot down in Sutherland. The funding from the province is for 2 30-bed shelter spaces. It is unfair and unnecessary to put that much strain on the Caswell Hill community and surrounding area. It is very close to 2 schools, a convalescent home, and right beside Harry Bailey Pool. So the question, is it possible for the proposed 60-bed to be reduced to 30-bed or ideally 10?
Thanks, Penny. So we've heard quite a bit about the efforts that have gone into finding a suitable location, whether it's for 30 or 60, a lot of work went in to identify this location. For the funding, the province provides funding for 60 spaces. At first, we were looking at 30 or 60. This specific site is suitable for 60 spaces. So at this point, I don't think we're looking at decreasing the number of beds.
Thank you, Kim. And we'll go to the podium again. I just want to thank everyone for the questions while she's making her way. I appreciate it. David, you'll be up next in the room after this question and then one online, just to give you a heads up. And just a reminder, 3 minutes and 1 question. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Karen. I've been a homelessness and housing advocate for, oh my gosh, probably about 15 years now. And this is really like the first time that I've seen this thorough of a public consultation. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. One of the things we haven't heard too much tonight is numbers. So I just want to ask the the government of Saskatchewan, you know, don't you think the goal of a shelter should actually be to serve 0 people? We don't need, we want to solve homelessness, not serve it. And we have created an entire business around homelessness and an economic ecosystem that supports homelessness. So Ms. Hornung, is the government of Saskatchewan aware? So I just found out about the $40 million for that the province of Saskatchewan provided today, and I've been doing this a long time. So I can tell you that over the last decade, the federal government has funded another $40 million to organizations and agencies in Saskatoon. So that's $80 million over 10 years. That works out to just over $60,000 per unhoused person. Why are we not making housing the goal and the target rather than we don't need more shelter. If you go by your point in time numbers of 1499, which are anecdotal, by the way, that is not we'll wait for HIPAA numbers and coordinated access numbers to come out here shortly. But 1,499 people, of those, 80% indicated, and we heard from Fire Chief Raymer that on the east side, they don't have mental health and addictions problems. Mental health and addictions are not mutually exclusive, and they're not the reason for homelessness. Without a house is the reason for homelessness. So of 1,499 people, we know from our point in time data, which since 2008, the percentages have stayed the same, that it is about 80% of people just need a place to live. They don't need shelter. So I'm wondering if the provincial government is looking to take these numbers to actually do the quantifiable analysis, the quantitative analysis, and to actually begin to, what I've been doing for the last 15 years,
Karen,
and to
I'll just
actually
give you
put
30
the
seconds.
numbers forward.
30-second notice, Karen. Go
I'm
ahead.
good.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if I can summarize it, Karen, and you can give me a nod if I'm correct, there's a number of statements in there. And then essentially the question is, what's the long-term strategy to shift away from housing unhoused into actual houses rather than shelters? Is that a good summary?
Sure.
Okay.
And have we looked at the data that does not support that we need more shelter? It actually does not support that.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Kim?
Thank you very much for that very difficult question. So the announcement that we made in 2023 is the start. We are actively looking and learning from what we're seeing in these communities and working with our partners. While homelessness is a complex issue that is not unique to Saskatchewan, you touched on the federal funding that's also available, and it is an issue across the country. The root causes are complex, including addictions and mental health issues for sure.
But you don't have the
I'm
data.
just going to ask you to wait and we'll let Kim finish her response. Thank you.
I'd love to connect with you afterwards, honestly. That would be great. So I'd love to hear more from you afterwards. We are actively trying to learn from what we've started. So if the feedback we gather from here, we're happy to hear and discuss of what you're seeing and what you're living out there. So let's connect afterwards for sure.
Yeah, it's a complex issue with a lot of answers. Thank you, Kim. I'm going to go online now. The safety plan, this one's from Christine, says that individuals who are displaying escalated behaviors such as anger or continuous disruptive actions are turned away from the shelter. When people are turned down because they are angry and escalated, what happens? Are they driven somewhere or offered a bus ticket? And I'll just ask Levi if he'll come up to the microphone to respond to this one. Thank you.
For anyone who's turned away for at full capacity, we try to work with them as best as we can to find other places. So we'll call out other shelters. We'll call the different outreach teams in town that will transport them. We will call the after hours services if they're on income assistance to see if they will get them a hotel. We currently do not have any transportation ourselves, the Mustard Seed, but we do everything we can in that case to try to find them housing that night.
Thanks, Levi. And I'm going to ask Staff Sergeant Mike Horvath if he wants to add in any comments around safety just beyond the site.
Yep. So a couple of things. When people are turned down because they're angry and escalated, that really is people that are in crisis and are experiencing homelessness or addictions. Sometimes those behavioral changes occur and things like that. And the service provider is much more better suited to deal with that individual at that time and in the moment. If police happen to be called because the matter cannot be calmed down by the service provider, then we look at it from a perspective in terms of how do we support that individual if we're the police, like if it's not criminal in nature. And then this talks about our again, our working coordinated group and the relationships that we've built in our community. So in an example like this, you know, we would be looking at our other service providers, like for instance, the Sway Toten Outreach Program, operated by the Saskatoon Tribal Council. They're a key player in supporting our community for individuals that are experience this type of need in this type of example, let's say, right? They can provide a connection to perhaps another shelter. They're also able to provide transportation, and sometimes it's just a bottle of water and a sandwich type of thing as well. So from a policing perspective, you know, if we happen to be called for a situation like this, you know, that's the type of approach that there would be an expectation on our uniform patrol officers to start networking out into that outreach component with the various service providers in our community.
Thank you. David, we're going to just bring a microphone over to you now here in the room. So Karen's just approaching right now with the microphone. Is it working?
One question. Like I said, I'm homeless and I'm scared shitless for tonight. Who can step up and help me find a place where I can sleep and eat and take care of myself for tonight? Thank you.
Thank you,
When
David.
your landlord can walk in on you and serve you with papers and stuff and call you a effing rat, there's things that happen why people are homeless out there when they get treated like that by landlords. They don't know their rights, so they'll serve them a paper. Get out. They listen. They're scared to act against them because it's going to get them into trouble or whatever. I've done this for 30 years and I've been homeless quite a few times, and now I'm blind and I'm 70 years old. Who's going to step up and help me? Right now, not tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to be evicted out of my house. So who can step up and help me? Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, David. I appreciate that. From a community perspective, I'm thinking a number of us will answer that question. And so I'm going to start with Yvonne.
I'm going to add to this one because actually I'm well aware of what David's going through, and just to give a little context, he's got a rentalsman hearing tomorrow. We've offered that any of our past history and files, we will support David, but we need to be neutral. We have to be like Switzerland. We can't be, for a tenant or for a caretaker. So David has come to the station a few times and we visited, and I've known David almost throughout my career, and tomorrow we're going to be there for him if he just has to remember to get all our documents subpoenaed, and then we can provide documentation just outlining some of the history at the building that he lives in.
Thank you, Yvonne. In terms of immediate supports that might be available, I wonder if the Mustard Seed wants to make comments from their perspective.
Let's talk afterwards, David.
Thank you. I'm going to go to an online question now. How will the province support the neighborhood, both homes, businesses, and schools, once the building is operating? As seen in Fairhaven, we're expecting increased crime, vandalism, needles, and threats to our safety. How will that be addressed for Caswell and Mayfair? What happens to someone who is too far gone for the shelter? Is the Seed still responsible for what they may do? So I think who we'll direct this to first is the province, and then we'll probably go to Staff Sergeant Mike Horvath to talk about the second part of that one. Kim?
Community safety is a top priority. We're going to gather the feedback from these sessions and make sure that it's included in specific community needs around the shelter. It'll be integrated into the integrated safety plan that will be developed with the city, the Saskatoon Fire Department, the Sask Police Service, the Mustard Seed, and the province of Saskatchewan. The goal of this plan is to have that coordinated presence. So Mike, I don't know if you want to add anything.
This is a good question, and I certainly understand the anxiety from, businesses and residents in the area. As I'd mentioned earlier, Yvonne, Michelle, and I have been part of this shelter strategy discussion for the last 4 years. So we've seen it from the beginning of the first EWC on First Avenue North as it transitioned out to Fairmont Drive, the opening of the temporary shelter, and now our discussions with this fall shelter. So one of the things I'm not going to keep talking about, you guys all heard me talk about the integrated operating plan. So I think the audience has a pretty good idea in terms of our support and the roles that we're going to play. One of the things I'd like to speak about is last week, Chief McBride spoke to City Council at the governance meeting last week, and he talked about the importance of reporting to the police service and data collection. I had showed you folks a couple of slides with respect to how we collect our data and how we look at it. Because the reality is that if people aren't phoning in to notify either police with respect to suspicious people, an increase in crime, and people are choosing not to report because it's like cops aren't going to show up, or it takes, it's too cumbersome online. It's difficult then for we as a police service to properly look at what the data is showing and showing us that, oh, okay, this area is heating up a little bit. How do we allocate our resources, and how do we best support the community? So I've been doing this job for almost 30 years. And folks, I've spoken to a couple of people. Like, I grew up in Caswell, Westmount. My mom's still in this area, so I know the neighborhood. I have roots in the neighborhood, and stuff. So I understand the anxiety. It's important that as a community, the community association, we have a good working relationship with our working coordinated group. There's good messaging from the community association to heed the words of Chief McBride. And if you see something suspicious, you need to be reporting that. It's these types of things that are going to be able to help us best assess the situation to ensure that the community is going to be stable and exactly what the community is looking for: a safe, well inviting place to live and be. So it's our job is to do the best that we can with the resources that we have. But we also are going to need to rely on our community members as well, and the businesses in the area to support those types of things that are unusual. I mean, if you've been a long-term resident, I heard a lady in here at the front, she's been in the community for some time. She's going to notice when things are out of sorts. If you're a long-time resident, you're going to know when things something is amiss, and that's going to be important for us to be aware of, so that we can address safety or community safety and well-being in the community.
Thank you. We're going to go to the podium here. If you could state your name. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Angela. I'm a nurse. I work at the hospital. I live a few blocks away from this proposed site. I know this shelter is necessary in Saskatoon. However, I also know firsthand what people will do if their bodies are dependent on opioids. I'm worried, or I have no judgment about people's dependencies on various substances. However, I know how powerful these substances are, and I know that recovery from dependency in most cases is wishful thinking. People definitely can be stabilized on methadone, Suboxone, etc., of course, and live stable lives. However, I'm worried that unstable people will leave their drug paraphernalia laying around in the playgrounds. Our children, my daughter attends, that are 295 meters and 365 meters away. So my question is, how much outdoor space is going to be made available for the people accessing the shelter? Like, will that field area behind the proposed site be accessible by the people using that space, using the shelter? I'm worried that if people don't have outdoor space close to the shelter, that they're going to start moving through the neighborhoods and using the school playgrounds seeing as the mustard seed won't let them use substances on their property. So that's my question. How much outdoor space is going to be available, like at the shelter and then also surrounding the shelter? Because there's that really big field that will be behind the shelter that's next to the train tracks there.
I think what we'll do is we'll start with Krista Dawn, if you can talk about the outdoor space at the shelter specifically, and then it's probably a number of us will chime in, Leslie, and perhaps Kim. It's better suited for Kim. Thank you for that. Go ahead.
Thanks. So in the presentation, Leslie included a slide. So it's that whole parking space. Right now, we're still working on design, but we do include some outdoor space. We include fencing. There'll be lighting included to make sure that the space that's available will suit a 60 space shelter. So there will be some outdoor space on that specific location.
How much space is available at other locations? Like what kind of size are we looking at? Like outdoor space.
So I can only speak specifically to the.
So I know how big that parking lot is. It's not huge. And if it's going to house 60 people, I feel like most of that space will be used up by the building.
We are still working through the design, but outdoor space is a focus in it or is included in it to make sure that there's enough outdoor space. Might include, there'll be parking, there'll be an outdoor smoking area most likely, but there will be some outdoor space on the site specifically for those residents that are using that space.
And who owns the field that's behind that parking lot? Like whose property is that? And is that space going to be available or is it going to be fenced off?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it over to Leslie to just talk about that aspect. Yeah, thank you.
So there's a few different kind of fields around and a variety of kind of owners. So, I mean, there is, the large parking area that's all part of Sask Poly's parking and is all around that's currently used for parking by Sask Poly. Then there is the site to the south of 31st Street, which is part of the Armory site. So they have that large field directly behind their area, which they use for their training facility. And then as you kind of go down the hill towards the railway, then you get into railway land and there's some city land there as well. So we are planning to add a fence directly near the rail line to prevent actual access to the rail line itself, because that is a trespassing issue for the rail company. But there will be, people are people, they will probably pass down in through that area on those fields. I don't know if that covers the exact area you're looking at.
That would be great. Like I think if you were able to leave that area open so that people could use that space just as a place to go to be outside, that would be really amazing. Instead of like pushing people into neighborhoods. Seems like a practical thing.
Thank you, Angela. I'm just going to note for those that are lined up in the room, we have only 16 minutes left for the question and answer. What I would suggest is if you have questions, Pigeonhole's probably the most efficient way for the questions that we can address in real time tonight. If you want to go in there and start upvoting or load your questions in, just given the time that's remaining. That's not to say your questions won't be answered. We'll provide a way to still ask those questions and get answers to those afterwards, but just practically looking at the time, I think we are probably won't tend to all the questions in person. So I'm going to flip to online. Ty Johnston has asked, does the province consider a community's capacity to navigate or handle another shelter? If this location is the best, what's to stop the entire Saskatchewan Polytechnic from becoming a shelter for hundreds of unhoused? Kim, so the question is, do you contemplate the community's capacity to handle another shelter? And we'll look to Kim and then we'll hear from Leslie on that one.
So there's a lot of information out there we've heard already from the folks on the floor and the folks at this table. We are learning as we progress down the road. So right now we know 60 spaces is a step in the right direction. We're going to continue working with our partners and using the pit count and any other information that's available to the province and our colleagues and everyone else to make sure that we're able to address those long-term. Sask Poly is still Sask Poly right now. So right now we're focused on addressing a 60 space shelter.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Kim. We'll go to the next person in the room. If you could state your name and go ahead. Thank you.
It's Mike. Anyways, I was canvassing my local neighborhood, collecting signatures for Casual Core. And the sense from everyone I was talking to is everybody has a different take on it. And some for, some against, some unsure. But it seems like the thing that most people are annoyed with the most is a thing that governments love to use. It's called transparency. And here there was no transparency. This got kind of dropped on our neighborhood with very short notice. And it sounds like it's a done deal. So, I mean, there should be more dialogue and there should be another serious session. But it sounds like there isn't going to be one. So is it a done deal? Is the input over? Like it was never really there. So that's my question.
Thank you, Mike. I'll pass it over to Leslie to respond.
Yep, thank you, and thank you for sharing that. I think I'll kind of reiterate what I said during the presentation. The city administration has made this recommendation to the province. The province has confirmed that it's suitable for their purposes. So as of today, it is a done deal. I understand the perspective on no consultation, and we did share out this information as soon as possible after the internal dialogue occurred and it was confirmed that this site was suitable. So as soon as that was done, that's when we issued the notices out to the community and issued the notices about these meetings. So I realize that it is not transparent in the way that you're looking for. But this was the decision-making process that we were working with and that we outlined to both the city council and to the province.
So
Thank you, Leslie.
why are we here? I mean, as if your hand on our throat.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I would just say we're here to listen to you so we can understand your concerns and so that we can make sure we can address as many of the concerns as possible and mitigate it as it goes forward. As Kim said, we're going to be working to make sure this is successful.
Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to go online. Joel has asked, the proposed shelter is a drop in the bucket. What plans do you have to meet the needs of the approximately 2,000 others who don't have a safe space to spend the night? And I'll look to Kim to respond to the homelessness strategy.
So I'm going to reiterate again. We know this is a step in the right direction to try to support individuals who are currently experiencing homelessness. Some of the other work that the province has done is over the past winter and spring, government also responded to extreme weather by providing $300,000 to the city of Saskatoon to support the cold weather strategy. So while it might not be shelter space, there's a lot of other investments that are going in to support individuals that are looking for a safe place to be.
Thank you, Kim. We're going to go to the podium. If you'd state your name, please.
Hi, I'm Becca Gunther. Thank you for hosting this informational session. I know they can be difficult. I work fully remote as a grant compliance manager and data specialist for a low barrier 58-bed shelter in Olympia, Washington. I currently live in Caswell Hill and I grew up in Caswell Hill. I'm very much in support of the shelter and I think it's a good thing. My question is, how are folks placed in the shelter? I heard part of it sounds like the temporary shelter, folks from there are going to be placed in the shelter from there. Is it lottery based? Is it by vulnerability, a 90-day continuous shelter?
Is it Patty? Thank you.
No, Becca.
Thank you. Krista Dawn, who's the best person? Levi? Yeah, if you would come up to the microphone, Levi, thank you. So the question was, how are folks placed in the shelter? How do they get priority there?
About 90% of our individuals that stay with us came and walked up, and that's how it is. There are a few things that would preclude someone from being able to stay in the shelter. We do not have the capacity to do lifts and transfers and stuff like that. So like really extreme mobility issues, we would not be able to help and assist with. So we can accommodate that. We do take referrals from other organizations, and when we have capacity, we do take those in as best we can. Capacity is an issue. We are full nearly every night.
Term limit, or is it continue to stay?
Quickly, yeah, because you're short.
I know.
We do not have a hard cap on how long someone can stay.
Thank you. I'm going to go online now, and this one will be for Mike and Yvonne. Can Saskatoon Police Service and Saskatoon Fire Department describe in more detail what their coordinated response looks like? If there are key times of day that we are concerned about, school hours, etc., and what would a higher response look like at those hours? So essentially the coordinated response and anything around key times.
Okay, I'll start and then Mike can back me up. So what we looked at is some of the peak times where the daycare was from 8 to 9 a.m. So fire, our bylaw inspectors actually park their vehicle. They actually walk in and around the shelter space, in and around it's about a 3-block radius, all in and around the shelter, looking for individuals who maybe were affiliated with the shelter but didn't get a space in the shelter. And if they do engage with somebody who's in an encampment, they'll follow their encampment process. They'll ask me to offer supports and work through that. However, if somebody's hanging around, we don't enforce loitering, but we do actually try to make connection to support services. You know, have you had a meal? Do you need transportation? Do you need water? What do you need access to? And when the transportation question actually came up, we do contact Sway-Toton. We actually will contact Salvation Army if we've exhausted those. We do, within our own department, have the ability to contact a cab. If somebody's willing to take supports and go to an organization that's willing to support them and meet them where they're at, we have the autonomy to actually call for a cab. We have an agreement with Ride, and we basically tell Ride where they're going to, whether it's the food bank, it could be to White Buffalo, it may be to the warm-up location or a cool-down location, and the instructions are of where they're going, and then the individuals are transported there. That is just one piece of the day. We're actually dedicated to 2 hours around the shelter, and then it's scalable as we need. It's backfilled or plugged in with police, and I'll let Staff Sergeant Horvath talk about the patrol units and the types of patrol that they do have, because I don't want to talk about that, like CMU and patrol. And then we have commissionaires. So the overnight piece is actually supplemented by commissionaires. And part of that walk around by the inspectors is that they do actually engage with the service provider. So they will actually go in and ask about, you know, what successes did you have? Are you having any concerns? And the inspectors will relay anything that they're seeing on the outside. So it's the exterior is what we support. We support the interior operation of a service provider like we do with any other shelter. And with the shelter, they work with us. Like if we're having an individual that maybe there's needs a connection, or if maybe they've had a difficulty, then we know what to look for and then try to connect them to other shelter spaces. And like I said, it is scalable. If we need more, then we increase that presence.
Yeah, thanks, Yvonne. So Yvonne's exactly talking about a tiered response in terms of police, fire, and utilizing the commissioners. So we'll speak specifically to the integrated operating plan that we have operating at downtown here on 210 Pacific Avenue. So it's exactly what she talked about in terms of like fire and then supported by police. So where the location of the temporary shelter is on Pacific Avenue, the units that are involved with respect to supporting that area in this integrated operating plan are the units that are designated in that division, if you will. So for instance, our teams of the bike unit and the alternative response officers are the two units that we utilize in this integrated operating plan, as Yvonne had mentioned, supporting both fire and the commissionaires. The commissionaires, of course, was a really good add-on by the city of Saskatoon with respect to when we looked at the gaps in terms of you know, gaps of service in order for coverage in and around the community. So that was a very nice add-on with them. As we roll into 2026, this is like, so as we're having this meeting with you folks, our real work now will start in Q4 of 2025, leading into Q1 of 2026, in terms of how we're going to be building the support plan for the future site. Because of course, the resources that are being currently deployed from the policing perspective, that's for the downtown area. So it's my job now is working with our coordinated team and then networking with my chief of police and the deputy chief in terms of what are we going to be doing in supporting this integrated operating plan. So that's kind of a step-by-step idea in terms of how we have a build and then how we support.
Thank you both. In terms of time, we do have the online questions captured. So because we only have 3 folks in line here, I'm going to focus in on the questions here in the room, if I may. So if you'd like to come to the podium. Thank you. Hal, right?
No,
Oh,
Nathan.
sorry. Thank you, Nathan.
There was a Hal somewhere.
Yes, my apologies.
My question might have been partially or reasonably addressed in there, but I was wondering what plans either the government or the mustard seat specifically have for you have a zero tolerance policy for any like drug consumption on or within the building or whatever, but for then something like integrating with services that are already in the community or reasonably close, like prairie harm reduction, places like that, like integrating with services that are already there, both in terms of like, substance abuse treatment, but then also just things like you want to be part of a community and you're staying in the shelter and you're in that community. What about like what's the word I'm looking for? Services offered through like the Harry Bailey when that opens, or like actual communal services and like fun things, or like things that enrich a person's life in other ways other than just the counseling and the treatment and all that kind of stuff, which I think would be outside of the scope of what Mustard Seed would typically do. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
I think the questions around wraparound services that.
I get, yeah. And working with, liaisoning with who's already here and trying to do things.
Excellent, thank you. So probably in part for Mustard Seed and then wraparound services for the province. So we'll start with Krista Dawn.
Yeah, so we're new to the city and we're building relationships and partnerships with as many organizations who want to work with us as possible. We offer programming through partnerships with other nonprofits, but we also do a lot of programming through volunteers. For example, my family just came and led a bingo night 2 weeks ago. On Thursday, it was a riot. We had a great time at the shelter. I'd highly recommend leading bingo. And so we want to provide a variety of services, not only to address the holistic well-being of every person that lives in our shelter.
Thank you, Krista Dawn. Kim, in terms of wraparound services and programming?
I don't know if I have much to add. We work with our service delivery agent to make sure that those connections are being made. So if there's opportunities to partner, we're always welcome to any groups that want to come forward and work with either the Mustard Seed or any of the other service providers in the community.
Thank you, Kim. And we have 2 more questions in the room, if you'd like to go ahead.
Hal, you probably remember.
There's Hal. Thank you, Hal.
Since the location was released by the city, I've received dozens of messages regarding community safety, specifically from the Fairhaven area. I will just read one. The promises made during the community meetings, such as increased police presence, fire handle ODs and paramedics, ARO presence daily, only when we complain does this happen, and a lot of promises by the shelter and the city that were not fulfilled. The city are very busy the police are very busy in the city, and I don't hold them responsible for all the issues. We have been bullied by the operator of this community repeatedly. And since then, we use the word operator, and it feels like we have been silenced. To me, based on the amount of messages I've received, it appears that you've fallen short of the safety measures. You talked about data, and that's important for analysis. But it doesn't stop violence in real time. Your speech is not preventative. So my question is, what modifications in strategy and practice have you put in place since the opening of Fairhaven that increases safety measures?
Thank you for that, Hal. Mike, if you would.
Yep, thank you. I've been part of the working committee group with the Fairhaven Emergency Wellness Center since its opening. Yes, it's certainly been a hot topic for the Fairhaven community, but what I will say to you is Chief McBride and Chief Wagrin recently spoke to the community, I want to say within the last 6-8 weeks, with some of the comments that you're coming up on. And that's one of the things that we've learned as a police service in terms of like the data analysis component, right? Because we say one thing and the community says another, right? Like we present the data that we have based on what's come into our organization. We present it to the community, but then the community, from what we heard with respect to some of the Fairhaven residents, is like, no, that's not accurate. It's not accurate. It's not telling the story. Well, we can only know what we know in terms of the data that's coming in based on for us to be able to resource properly. Now, with respect to the ARO program, we have the AROs deployed out there Monday to Friday, in the morning and in the afternoon. Those are government funded positions that we committed to the province. So we have them on rotation out there. Now, are you going to see them all the time, every minute of the day? Of course you're not. It's just like the AROs downtown. When the AROs make an arrest, perhaps they arrest an individual who's intoxicated by, for whatever reason, and we have to utilize, let's say, the complex needs emergency shelter, the CNES building that goes on here. When we have, whether it's an ARO or a uniform member that takes a call for service that perhaps affects an arrest, we put that person down for 90 minutes minimum. By the time we effect the arrest, do the search, do the transport, then the administrative component. So there's lots of other things that are out there. I can appreciate, the question that you're giving. What we're just trying to do here in this venue is try to explain to the community that this is our working plan that we have, and we've been doing this as, over the last 4 years, and we continue to learn is basically what we're doing. And what we're trying to also explain is that with the resources that we have, the coordination that we have in place between the city, police, and fire, we're trying to give the community and the service provider, as well as our marginalized folks, because, there is some hot topics in here, but let's remember, they're people. They didn't wake up in the morning one day and say, you know what, I think I want to be an addict and I want to be homeless. I've been doing this for 30 years and that's not the reality. So I can appreciate what's being said, but also I think sometimes we forget that they're people, okay, and stuff. So what we're trying to do here is trying to show the folks of Caswell Hill and area that we have a plan. We're going to do the best that we can to support you folks, support the service provider, as well as supporting our marginalized, vulnerable population. So that we can live communally in our community, because we are a community, and that's what community is trying to support one another. Because I don't know if people are paying attention with what's going on down south. I certainly don't want to go that route, and the answer to move homeless populations out of communities to the outskirts, well, how do they receive service? Where does that come from? Where do they access service? So I mean, it's a hot topic conversation. So in closing, I guess what I'm just wanted to say to you and the audience is that we have a process. We have a working relationship between the three institutions of city, police, and fire. We have an integrated operating plan. We've tried to explain it to you folks the best that we can. Is it perfect? Probably not, because certainly there's going to be residents that are not happy. But we are doing something with what we have, and it's important that we continue to engage in this dialogue and this discussion, so that when things become frustrating or you feel like things are happening, we need to know. And then I think as that conversation continues to happen, then that will allow us to adjust as needed to support the community. So.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant. And in the interest of time, we have one final question, and then we're going to move into next steps and closing remarks.
Hello, my fellow citizens of Saskatoon. I am so happy we have shelters. January 2025, I fell down. I drove myself to City Hospital and I'm alive today. My question is that does the city have any empty units like SHA? And how many are currently open and unused? Maybe the Saskatchewan government can give me the answer or the website. Congratulations for having shelters. We have fire, we have floods, whether you're in Africa or in Canada. If you wake up tomorrow like Dave and there's no COCAM to give you somewhere to sleep, I'm happy Dave is here. Put him in shelter. Never, ever stop shelter. When we have people come from Africa, well, just the place I know, they need the job to do here and they're doing it and they don't know how to get the housing. My honorable MLA, Miss April Chief, I told her, and my fellow Good Samaritan, Karen, she has a very good point. Give us the money, we build the houses, and the mortgage will be 60,000, like Karen said. Okay, I don't know what Karen said, but the English part she said, Karen, I liked it. Anyway, housing is important. I follow whatever is going on, and I think all of us can be nice to each other as human beings. And we have shelter, we have 60,000 mortgage for the person that needs a house. Amen? Do I have a witness?
Thank you. Kim, if you'd like to respond regarding housing, and then we'll move into closing remarks and next steps. Thank you for that.
Through the Saskatchewan Housing Corporation, that there are government-owned homes or rentals within the city of Saskatoon. So I'll connect with you afterwards and I can get you contact information in Saskatoon and surrounding areas if you are looking. The vacancy rate is low, but we'll get you in contact with them and hopefully we can help you out.
Thank you for that. That concludes our question and answer period. There are questions remaining online. Where the city can answer those from their perspective, they will be posting it. We'll show you a slide at the end of this presentation and you'll see where you can go to get answers to those questions. But what I do like to do is ask Leslie to kick us off into the next steps and closing remarks.
Thank you, Penny, and thank you everyone for coming out. Definitely appreciate the questions and the comments and your ideas. And we recognize the concern that some of you have shared with us tonight. So we will be working again with this continued group to work through the next stages and ensure that the planning is in place for this to be a success and for it to operate as best as it can within the community. If I can just take the opportunity to address the one question about 912 Idlewild Drive North, because I can tell you for the last 2 years, I've had endless number of rumors come through my office about this site or that site is going to be a shelter. We have no indications at all that this would be a shelter site. There are just a lot of rumors. So we have announced the shelter site at the 170 31st Street location.
I'll go next. Again, I just want to say thank you to everyone for taking the time to join us today and learn more about the enhanced emergency shelter. I definitely appreciated hearing your feedback and we'll connect with some of you afterwards. I did not forget, so come see me afterwards. In my role at the ministry, I know a great deal of work is happening across the province to address the complex issue of homelessness. This work requires collaborative efforts on all levels of government, along with community and Indigenous partners to improve outcomes for those in our communities. The safety and well-being of individuals accessing shelter services, shelter staff, and surrounding neighborhoods remains an important consideration in how we move forward. We'll continue to work closely with the City of Saskatoon, the Mustard Seed, as the development of the shelter progresses. Hand it over to you.
Thank you again from my perspective of coming, and it's really great to hear your concerns. In our experience, when people have safe shelter, it reduces neighborhood concerns by giving people a place to go. And we recognize that this is difficult, and we're committed to open communication. And we really want to hear from you through all elements of this, aspects of this process. So if you have any questions after tonight, you can reach me at infosaskatoon@theseed.ca, or just go to our website, and you'll see on our website the Saskatoon page how to get a hold of our shelter. We've hosted many Caswell Hill residents already on tours, and if you are eager to come in and see what our shelter looks like, we would love to host you. And we really do hope that this is the beginning of a good way to work together. It's not the end of our conversation. And we really look forward to growing hope in Saskatoon with you. Thanks.
I want to say thank you, really thank you to everybody for coming out from your neighborhood to listen to us tonight. The dialogue is so important. Being part of the community is so very, very important. So what I would, our next steps is this continued group, as already mentioned, and this is something that we'll be, working towards through Q4 of this year, stepping into Q1 of 2026. This work is just starting. Utilize the information that will be presented for the email that's going to be given for any other further questions, or if you'd like for us to reach out. Community is important, so utilize your Caswell Hill Community Association as a voice and be strong that way. Utilize your association and reach out to them, have meetings, and voice your concerns that way as well. And again, thanks very much for coming this evening.
Hey, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for the conversation. Sometimes they can get difficult, and I always love difficult conversations because sometimes we are better together when we challenge one another, and I think that's fantastic. Next steps will be, we are looking at current data and I hate speaking about data and its health. We are transparent in our data, but do report your concerns in your neighborhoods, because if I don't have that, I don't know about it. So if you're feeling it and you haven't reported it, we're encouraging you to report it, because we don't have a way of knowing there's issues unless it's being reported. So we are going to be looking at what's current state within that, not just Caswell Hill, but the surrounding neighborhoods. Are we seeing a change as we have an increase of homelessness? And then is there going to be a change when the shelter happens? And we do have our integrated operating plan we're already putting into motion and looking towards working on and doing some community engagement. This isn't one and done for us. This is open conversation. This is your community, and our job is to try to make it as thriving and as resilient for all residents of this neighborhood. So I know you may not have faith in us tonight, but we are here for you. It's not like we're going to take a run and say, poof, there's a cartoon dust. Not at all. We are as invested boots on the ground as we can be to help this community serve everybody. And I do understand the fear of a shelter, but we're here. We're not running away. So I want to thank everybody here tonight for the conversation. But again, it's not one and done. And I saw a few questions up there that maybe I could answer. So if it's something around encampments, around shelters, just come and talk to me after and I can answer your questions so nobody goes unanswered tonight.
Thank you for that. And on behalf of the panelists and the partners here, we wish to sincerely thank you for the respectful and thoughtful dialogue. To those participants that are here in person and those that are online, again, you can go to the website that you see here to get those other answers to questions that the city will endeavor to answer. So thank you for attending and have a wonderful evening.